Hi there, I'm Jim Zirin. Welcome back to more Conversations in the Digital Age. In the 13th century, the Roman Catholic Church developed a process for vetting candidates for the sainthood and debunking false claims. I always wondered why I never made it. The team that did the vetting for the Vatican were called the Devil's Advocates. They framed the argument for disproving the assertions of sainthood. The exercise continues to this very day. The Devil's Advocates gave rise to what Americans call red teaming. Red teaming may refer to a process of critical analysis for testing or gaming an installation, a product or a plan of action from the viewpoint of a potential enemy, so that managers can search for fatal flaws and correct strategic weaknesses. I once had a philosophy professor in college who advised of imagining under what circumstances would what I am saying be false. This is red teaming. Exactly how does red teaming work? Our guest is here to tell us. Back with us is Micah Zenko. Micah Zenko is a senior fellow at the Council on Foreign Relations who has written an extraordinary new book entitled Red Team: How to Succeed by Thinking Like the Enemy, in which he cites some fascinating examples of how critical thinking can assist a military operation or save a city from a terrorist attack. Micah, we're delighted to have you back with us.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Now, congratulations on your book. Tell us about what motivated you to write such a book.
Well, I had learned about red teams and vignettes and examples by talking to people and just, reading historical narratives, but nobody had written a comprehensive account of the process. Part of it is that a lot of red teaming occurs in the intelligence community, like the CIA, in the U.S. military, or the private sector, which is the most secretive of any institution I looked at. And so it's sort of hidden. People sign non-disclosure agreements, there's secrecy issues. And I kept wondering, why has nobody written a comprehensive account? Why has nobody said what works, what doesn't? And I was fortunate enough to spend 5 years basically interviewing more than 200 people to learn about this very social process. So I decided to tackle it and write a book.
Well, how'd you get people to talk to you? You didn't promise them immunity.
Patience. Demonstrating you know something about a subject, and then people want to share what they know, because most red teamers have very proprietary ideas about what they're doing. They are usually inherently skeptical by nature. They're untrusting by nature, so it takes a lot of time building out, developing relationships, and proving that you're going to be a responsible steward of what they've told you.
And what do you think is really the relevance of this subject? I mean, what interested you in it, and what do you think will interest readers and consumers of information about foreign policy?
Everybody, I tell the theme of the book is you can't grade your own homework, which I think is something that resonates with everybody at an individual level. You might believe that you're a really good judgment of your behavior, of your performance at work, of your ability to keep a diet or whatever, but the one thing we know from lots of research is that people are horrible judges of themselves. They delude themselves willingly, they take selective information that they remember, and then they sort of externalize all their problems onto others or their environment. What red teaming does is it sort of identifies that if you go somewhere to work every day, you are incredibly structured by the processes, by the norms, by the command climate in the military, by the values, by what your bosses want, and you are unable to see things in a different and inherently challenging way.
Well, let's start with the church. How did the Vatican do it, and how is it doing it now?
Basically, for the first about 1,200 years after Jesus, local parishes decided who became saints. And it was people either through some sort of allegedly strong professor of the faith or some alleged miracle, they were just named saints. And over time, the Vatican didn't want this because they wanted to centralize control, and they didn't like the idea of people sort of deciding on their own who would become saints because they're so venerated within the Catholic Church. So they created a position in the 1200s where it was it was literally called the devil's advocate. The devil's advocate was responsible to find all the disconfirming evidence to deny somebody sainthood. And there were trials that would go on for decades, many decades, about similar individuals. They had to have evidence of 2 miracles. They had to find the evidence, talk to people who knew the saint, or talk to people who were relatives who knew the saint. And a lot of people were just denied it. And that was the job of the obligation, because the point was that if this certain venerated, respected person was incorrectly named to sainthood, it would look bad upon the Catholic Church.
Is it the same idea as an outside audit, really? And what an auditor is supposed to do is, a financial auditor, is to maintain a healthy professional skepticism, and the auditor's role is essentially to disprove, at least the approach is, to disprove the assertions of management. Is that really the mindset of a red teamer?
It can be, but a red teamer is generally more devious and exploitative and I would say invasive than a typical auditor. You hire an auditor for regulators or law or whatever to give the appearance of due diligence that your business is functioning as it should be under law. A red team comes in and doesn't just look for weaknesses in your argument, it looks for ways to identify what could be catastrophic problems in your business plan. Like, for example, a very common red teaming is pharmaceutical industry. Pharmaceuticals do tons of red teaming because it's lots of different actors, regulators, distributors, consumers, a marketplace that has lots of competitive, low margin of return. And if you have a drug, for example, going off patent, you have to consider how all these other people will respond to what that drug going off patent. And you will hire people to assume the role of the regulators, of the marketplace, of the distributors, et cetera, to pressure test everything you're about to do. And they will say, this will fail, and here are the critical points of weakness in your business plan that will cause failure. And that's the sort of thing an auditor won't do. An auditor will just make sure everything's operating smoothly. A red team helps you understand how things will fail dramatically.
Now, what's the size of a typical red team?
It varies widely. It depends on what you want to do. I should say there are 3 types of red teaming I can say very quickly. One is what's called a vulnerability probe. This is when you have a computer network or you have some building like this one that you want to secure. You will hire individuals to assume the role of likely adversaries to break in. And they do it all the time. They succeed. You wouldn't believe how insecure, allegedly secure things are. But the point isn't to embarrass and humiliate the defenders, but the point is to identify vulnerabilities and give corrective measures to improve them. The second type is simulations. This is when there's an event that's about to happen, you think through every way it could fail. So this is business plans. This is you're about to go to war. You're going to war game. What is your campaign plan to take down ISIS, for example? The third is what's called alternative analysis. And this is the big example in the book is what's called the CIA red cell. The red cell.
So in the CIA, it's called a red cell. Everywhere else, it's a red team.
And it's interesting. It was called a red cell because the director of the CIA, who formed the red cell 3 days after 9/11, decided to give it a title that he would think would be conspiratorial, and it would have this cachet to it. What the red cell does is it exists outside of the other intelligence community agencies. Most intelligence community agencies do what is called mainline authoritative analysis. They describe the world as it is. The problem is if you're a policymaker, it's described to me, it's like reading The Economist every day. Like, this is about how the world it is. It doesn't really help me think through challenges or potential scenarios that we haven't thought through. That's what the red cell does. So that's alternative analysis. Now, the size of either of these three types of red teams varies widely. If you want to try to break into your computer networks, you might hire a group of, say, 3 people. It might be $20,000. You give them 2 weeks to try to break in every different way. At the end of it, they give you screenshots. They demonstrate how they broke in, and then they provide a set of corrective measures in a prioritized way to remediate the most likely vulnerabilities. If you want to do a large-scale simulation, like the ones I talk in my book, which I was fortunate to attend, the New York Police Department commissioner does tabletop exercises before the marathon, before the Super Bowl, to consider potential terrorist scenarios. Those, there were over 100 people in the room for those, and they take about 3 hours, and they're a rigorous review of how all these different individual agencies in the NYC and the NYPD will respond to a terrorist situation.
Let's just start with the police department. I remember that Commissioner Kelly was quite taken with the scenario in Mumbai after the attack in 2008. And then he sent officers to India. They kind of recreated the game plan of the terrorists And then they asked the New York question, what would it be like if something like that happened here? Now, is that a form of red teaming?
It is, and they, Commissioner Kelly actually sent officers to Mumbai. They were on the ground within 48 hours after the shooting had stopped. They gathered information and intelligence from all the participants, the local security guards, the police forces, the army that responded, and they recognized that Mumbai was actually physically shaped like Manhattan. It's a peninsula. They came aboard on boats. They dispersed in multiple teams, heavily armed. And they thought about, well, what would happen if a group of well-trained, well-armed, multiple teams came into Manhattan to create havoc? And they went to likely places like Jewish Community Center, high-end hotels, areas where of significance and some cultural cachet to try to kill as many people as possible. Because the existing assumption in the NYPD was that hostage-taking situations are to buy time, to try to bargain something, to try to get an escape. But what the Mumbai people wanted to do was kill people. I mean, that was their job. They went and deliberately killed as many people who they believed were non-believers of Islam. And so within 5 days after the end of Mumbai, they ran a tabletop exercise where they found...
What do you mean by a tabletop exercise?
So a tabletop exercise is you call all the people, at the local level, they're 2-star NYPD commanders. There's a couple for Manhattan, there's a couple for Brooklyn and the various... the boroughs. You call the fire department, you call the detectives, you call the bomb squad, you call the transit, bridge, and tunnel authority, all the different people who would potentially be responders to this situation. You don't tell them what it's about. You don't tell them what the scenario is. So what happens is they get to have a sheet which they look at, and I've seen them, it's every force that they'd have available to them. Every patrol officer, every responder, every car. And they then said, okay, someone stands up in front of the room and they say, terrorists are reported to have dispersed in multiple teams throughout the cities and they're killing people. And they give very limited information, just fragments, just snippets. Now what do you do? Now what do you do? And one of the things they found out was that if they found out a couple things. One was that the NYPD did not have good ideas of the floor plans of big hotels. Midtown East hotels, if terrorists came, you might not know where the power room was, where the computer room was. You might not know where to disperse, where they could hide, how you would try to get at them if they were in the lobby, for example. They also realized that actually you think there are a lot of SWAT officers. These are heavily armed people who respond to counterattack terrorists in Manhattan. Turns out there weren't that many. And the Mumbai attack lasted 72 hours, and they found out that they exhausted the entire supply of NYPD SWAT officers. And Commissioner Kelly told me there was this moment where the head of the SWAT team sort of looks at his personnel roster and he says, well, I'm going to send 100 more people. And Commissioner Kelly says, you don't have 100 more. So now you're going to either send patrol officers or allow people to get killed. So what they did in response to us, they trained 300 more people from counter-narcotics in use of heavy weapons and long rifles if they had to act as SWAT in an emergency situation. And they also stashed throughout New York now, there are additional depots of heavy weapons and long rifles.
In top secret locations.
In top secret locations, they used to not exist because if you needed to get the manpower and the firepower to this situation as fast as possible, now they're much better prepared, right? It used to be that they weren't as well prepared. And the only reason, what the red team simulation does is it identifies all the shortcomings in your plan in a really vivid and specific way because the participants didn't want to be embarrassed. And they would have to say, like, we're not ready. We don't know what we would do. And you watching it in person, it's a really tense, packed room. It's on 16th floor of One Police Plaza. And it has a big impact. And they've done it for Mumbai. They did it for the Super Bowl. They've done it multiple times before the marathon. Like, what happens if a bunch of runners coming up First Avenue in the mid-'70s all of a sudden start collapsing and throwing up? Did they get tainted water? Does it look like a cluster of people who are just sick? Because that's actually at mile 16, 17 when people tend to get tired of running 26 miles. And then
Sounds as though you're a marathoner.
But then what do you do to respond, right? And it's only as a result of the simulation do you learn and do you become better prepared to potential likely scenarios.
Okay, in 2015 there were 2 terrorist attacks in Paris, 2 dastardly attacks in January, the Charlie Hebdo attack and the attack at the Bataclan much later in the year. Has the NYPD done anything in the way of tabletop exercises to comprehend what happened in Paris and sort of translate what it might look like if it happened in New York?
Well, the one thing is the NYPD is like the world's sort of police intelligence agency. So undoubtedly they've gone to Paris multiple times. They've met with all the responding officers. They met with the police Paris officials, and they've gathered all the information. They have done Charlie Hebdo and Bataclan-like scenarios multiple times. So ideally, tragically, if something like that happened in Manhattan or one of the boroughs, the NYPD would be fairly well responded. What I don't know is whether or not they had done these red team simulations in Paris. I mean, lots of people do lots of counterterrorism response simulations, but many of them are sort of check-the-box exercises. They aren't very realistic. They don't really hold the senior leaders and the officers to account. You just sort of do it, you see how you respond, and you don't really better prepare yourself for contingency scenarios. So that you never know.
I think that operators such as Commissioner Kelly have been critical of the security forces in Paris because it took them so long to respond.
Yeah, I mean, that if the, is
they
the
appear
question
to be unprepared.
were they unprepared? Right, because of personnel. Were they unprepared because of firepower? One of the other things they've done at the NYPD is, for example, they used to not have a roster of everyone's home phone number or everyone's cell number because you might need to call people up to respond immediately. And that's something in the last few years they now have. They have preset situations where they can call, they have them divided up into different capabilities and authorities within the police. They call everyone and says, like, you have to be at your precinct now. And that's a sort of response time thing that they used to not have.
Now, here's a question that cuts across all kinds of red teaming as well as the preparedness exercises that you've been describing. And if I were the mayor or perhaps the police commissioner, I would not like to be told by someone that I was unprepared for a terrorist attack, that I wasn't doing enough to protect the citizens. And similarly, if I were the chief executive officer, or the chief information officer of a private sector company, I wouldn't like somebody, certainly within the organization and even outside the organization, to tell me my business plan was flawed or something I was doing was bad. I mean, how do you get buy-in, in effect, from those who are managing the institution to the whole exercise of red teaming?
What you identified as a critical problem with forming and having effective red teams is that most senior leaders believe, and I learned this in interviews, you read senior profiles in business and in military journals and publications, they believe that they know everything that happens in their institution, one, and they believe that if something's going wrong, somebody will tell me. Now, unfortunately, if you've ever worked anywhere and you read surveys of employees, people are unwilling to speak up. They call it voicing up in the business world.
Well, they have anonymous suggestion boxes. I can make a suggestion anonymously and drop it in the box, and then they'll fix the problem.
Right, and the people who do this say, like, the evidence that people are unwilling to voice up in a company is anonymous tip lines and boxes, right? I mean, if you cannot go to somebody who will do something with bad information, then it's sort of pointless. And most people don't voice up because they think they'll be retaliated against, or most likely they think it's pointless. So most people know problems in their institution, and they do not tell anybody about it because they think there's no reason to do it. Now, if a senior leader has that mindset, then it's almost impossible to red team, right? And most red teaming happens because regulatory agencies require it. There's some horrible catastrophic situation in their industry. For example, when Target got hacked by this Russian malware, and it cost hundreds of millions of dollars, and the CEO and the CISO and a bunch of the board members lost their jobs, a number of similar payment card industry stores did a lot of red teaming. But it required this catastrophe at Target before they decided to do it. So that's one way you have buy-in, which is they look at their competitors, they say, like, this could happen to us and I could lose my job. The other thing you have to do, though, is you have to make it vivid and real to the boss, right? I mean, if it's for example, if I'm trying to break into a building and you're a healthcare provider and you have HIPAA requirements to protect patients' data, and you demonstrate that I can get in and get access to their data and put it on the dark web and sell it. If I can demonstrate to do that, everyone that you work with is going to lose your job, and there's going to be huge penalties to your firm. You have to do that and demonstrate that I could have been a bad guy who did this. And then they go, oh, well, maybe we should do something. Or, for example, if you break into the hospital, you slip your business card underneath the CEO's mouse pad. And you send them an email saying, like, this is how insecure your building is. And then the CEO looks at their mouse pad and says, maybe we should improve security.
Or maybe he tears up the card and throws it away. What is the model of a successful red teamer? What kind of personality traits and traits of intelligence go into a successful red teamer?
Well, it's usually, there's two critical points. There's the red teamers themselves, and then there's the individual who engages with the leader within the institution. So, for example, if my job is to break into your building, I'm going to talk to the head of security, and I'm going to say, let's what they call scope the engagement. What things do you want to demonstrate are secure or insecure? And then I will have 2 days to break in. I might assume the role of somebody delivering pizza or somebody here for a job interview. I might come in through the smoking door, through the loading dock.
But he'll say, I want a report that doesn't make me look bad.
A lot of them are sort of, as they say, prostituted in that way. They're falsified or they're scoped so narrowly. For example, a typical red team engagement is that the security guard might say, or the head of the security team might say, you can only try to get in through the front door. You can't come in through third-party vendors or contractors. You can't come into the loading dock because that's not a very secure place. Well, then you've had an artificial red team engagement. And a lot of real red teamers won't even participate with that. But they will, again, the point is not to embarrass or humiliate, and everyone signs non-disclosure agreements, so even if it makes you look bad, you ultimately decide what to do with it. And lots of bosses, you're absolutely right, decide that I need to hide this because if this gets out, I'll look bad. But on the other hand, if something bad happens, you can say, look, we have the appearance of due diligence where we hired this red team to identify vulnerabilities. So that's the sort of challenge a red team has because lots of red teaming is done, it's artificial, and it's ignored.
So, Mike, can you give us two, for instances, one where red teaming has succeeded and one where red teaming has failed?
Well, a good recent example, which will resonate with a lot of people here, is the Department of Homeland Security tests the security at airline screening checkpoints. And what they do is they don't hire people who are security professionals or really good spies or creative people. They take people off the Office of Inspector General's desks and at DHS, and they say, try to smuggle through a knife or some explosive or some banned material to the checkpoint. So they just literally look at it, and then they try to smuggle the knife through. And they recently did tests at 6 airports, and they succeeded 67 out of 70 times. So
wow, 67 out of 70 times.
And these are not people
scary.
And these are not people even good at what they're doing. They're literally taken off a desk and told to try to smuggle something through. Now, the point of that again isn't to embarrass any individual person.
Are they told how to smuggle it in?
No.
It's just left to them.
They're given a short amount of time to surveil, and then they just decide how to do it. And they succeed often, which is why if you've tried to get on a plane recently, the lines are longer. What they did is they took everybody and they spent an entire day retraining everybody. They now insist everyone go through 2 points of screening. The fast lane is no longer as fast. The lines for everything else is even longer because they were trying to get people through quicker. Now, there's a trade-off between functionality and time and security, and they ratcheted up the security component, right? So in that sense, the red team engagement, I think in many ways, has succeeded. Now, there are lots of other red teams that don't succeed, and one of the more troubling examples I have in the book is, you may remember in August 1998, the United States bombed 2 facilities at one time. They bombed Osama bin Laden's training camp in Afghanistan, and then they bombed a pharmaceutical factory in Khartoum, Sudan, that they claimed bin Laden owned, and he was making VX nerve gas there. Turns out bin Laden did not really own it, and it turns out VX nerve gas wasn't being made there. Now, the problem was that the intelligence was based upon one single source, an Egyptian agent who gathered a clump of soil, and they found this precursor to VX nerve gas there. The problem was the intelligence was never subjected to any red team. It was just the people from the WMD arm of the CIA, and there were other people who said, this is really problematic. You need to ask a red team to review the intelligence who haven't been read in on it yet, and to come to an alternative conclusion. And they decided not to do that. So the people in the White House who made the decision to bomb this pharmaceutical factory in Sudan made the wrong policy choice because the intelligence upon which they based their decision was flawed.
Since you wrote the book, have you gotten feedback from policymakers? Have you talked to people? What's the reaction been?
It's very interesting because people come to me and they say, I want to red team my business, or we want to red team our organization. And I say, that's great. Why? You know, it's like a therapy discussion. You try to work with them and you say, what is it you want to really review and assess? What vulnerabilities do you want to find? And they don't know. You know, even most CEOs and most bosses aren't quite sure what their game plan is, what their strategy is. So the first step of red teaming is to understand what the red team could plausibly do to help you. And I've sort of gotten better at having that discussion. The other thing I've learned is that there's more red teaming than I even knew in the book, right? The book, again, I talked to 200 people. I found everything I could. I put every story in there. And there's more people doing this than I knew. And the most satisfying aspect was the people I interviewed, and some of the people I did interview said, thank you for bringing this to the attention of the American people and to policymakers. And they say, we think you got it about right. We think you told our story in a way that was faithful to sort of how we describe our work. And that's been very meaningful.
Okay, you got it about right. I'm afraid we've run out of time, but I have a question for you. Mike Ozencko, how useful is it to think like the enemy?
It's very useful.
Very useful. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming by. And thank you for coming by. Tune in next week for more Conversations in the Digital Age. I'm Jim Zirin. Have a wonderful day.